Well, good morning or good afternoon or good evening, no matter where you are in the world. Welcome to VA Careers Live. My name is Mike Owens, and I'm a human resources specialist with the Veterans Health Administration, as well as your host for our weekly segment, Talk About It Tuesday. If you're tuning in for the first time, as always, I want to let you know that we are here every Tuesday. That's right, every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. So feel free to grab a snack, grab something to drink, and just join us as we talk about careers here at VA. Now, if you're tuning in for the first time or you've been with us forever, almost 3 years, can't you believe we've been doing this for almost 3 years? We want you to be part of the conversation. Obviously, we want to know what you guys think about our program. We want to know all the awesome questions that you have about careers at VA, whether it's the actual careers themselves or the application process or whatever process regarding VA careers you want to know about. Submit those questions. Some of those questions will be answered on our live broadcast, and some will be answered in the comment section later today or next week. But no matter what, please submit those questions. Also, we all know someone that wants to work here at VA, so we ask that you please share our broadcast. Again, please share the broadcast so we can get all of this information about VA careers out to the whole world and so that we all can have a lot of great candidates working here at VA. So, with that, I'll go into our discussion for today. Today, we're going to be talking about applications. So, basically, application 101. We have a lot of questions about the application process. I know that there's a lot of information that can be given, but because of the short time that we have for this broadcast, I won't be able to answer everything with this presentation that I have today. So again, leave those questions, and we'll try to answer some of those questions today. But before we get started, I want to ask a question since we're talking about applications. Now, I know some of you have applied for many jobs here at the VA. So my question for today is, what was the last job that you applied for here at VA? So if you just recently applied for a job on USA Jobs, or you applied a few weeks back, a couple of months ago, what was the last job that you applied for here at VA? And so I'm interested to see the different career fields that you guys have represented in the comment section. So with that, we're going to go into our discussion again. As I mentioned a few moments ago, we are talking about applications, the application process here at VA. As most of you know, for most of our specialties, except for some of our provider occupations, those being nurses and doctors, or those that provide direct patient care, most of the positions at VA, you have to apply through the USA Jobs platform. And I know USA Jobs can be a pain, and I know a lot of you really dislike that platform because you've said it plenty of times. But we have to go through that platform for the application. So today I'm just going to offer some tips on how to become a good applicant. So the first thing that I would recommend for everyone, and this is for those, especially for those who have not done this yet. Maybe you're tuning in for the first time, or maybe you have not applied for a job here at VA yet, or any government job. So you're not familiar with how the USA Jobs platform works. So if you are in that case, if you're new to the USA Jobs, or you've never been on the USA Jobs platform, my first thing is to go and create a USA Jobs profile. Create it ahead of time. Don't wait until you see a job or a vacancy that you're interested in, and then you have to hurry up and create your profile to try to apply for the job before it closes. So if you're not actively looking for any positions on USA Jobs, but you know that you may be doing that in the future, again, my recommendation is to go ahead of time and go ahead and put together your USA Jobs profile. And I'll go down some of the things that you need for your USA Jobs profile. So when you create your USA Jobs profile, there are some basic things that you need. First of all, you need a resume. I know that USA Jobs have a resume builder that you can fill out as you're applying for these jobs, and that's okay. And I know we get this question a lot. A lot of you always ask, does it matter if you have your own resume in PDF form, or should you recommend using the resume builder on USA Jobs? Use whichever one you're most comfortable with. One is not going to get you the interview over the other. So if you use your own resume in a Word document or a PDF format, or you decide to use the the resume builder on USA Jobs, us as hiring managers, we won't care which one you use. So don't feel like you have to use one or the other. Don't feel like you have to use both. There are some positions out there that will require you to have a resume or use a resume builder, but that's very far and few in between. Most of them will allow you to just upload your resume that you have already created. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether or not you use the resume builder or you have your own resume that you upload to USA Jobs. So the next thing that I would recommend that you have, and this is another controversial one because it's really not required in most positions that you apply for, but I will recommend that you have a cover letter. A cover letter allows you to say things that your resume cannot clearly convey, or allows you to add a little bit more information that your resume that you really can't say, or your resume really can't convey that. So again, I would recommend that you have a cover letter. And we'll talk about cover letters a little bit later, but yeah, have a cover letter. If you are a status candidate means you meet one of the special categories, one of the special hiring categories. So a status candidate can be a veteran. If you want to apply under veterans preference, you're a status candidate. If you want to apply under the military spouse preference, you're a status candidate. If you are a federal employee, guess what? You're a status candidate because you can apply to vacancies that are open only to federal employees. If you are a former federal employee, which means you used to work for any federal agency, you also are a status candidate because you can also apply for positions under the federal the federal employee. There's all those different statuses that you have. Those if you qualify for any of those statuses, you're considered a status candidate, but you have to have the documentation. If you're applying under veterans preference, you have to have your DD-214, your disability paperwork. If you're a disabled veteran, you must have that information uploaded into your USA Jobs profile. If you are a military spouse, you must have your, there's different levels of military spouse, but you can just go ahead and look up those that you need your spouse's orders, you need your spouse's, just different things that prove that you are a military spouse. But whatever status you're applying under, you must have those documents to prove that on your application, because I can't just say I'm a veteran and not have my veterans preference information uploaded. So whatever you apply under, you must be able to prove within that application that you fall under or you're eligible to apply under that preference. All right. Again, any government documents, if you are a current VA employee or a current federal employee, you need things like an SF-50 that shows that you are a current federal employee, and it shows your current grade level, your current job title, and you're going to need all that. Whenever you apply under the federal employee status, you must have those documents to prove that you are either a current federal employee or a former federal employee. If you decide that you want to apply for these jobs and you want education to be considered in your application, you must have all your resumes. I know a lot of times we think it's easy just to kind of take a picture or upload a PDF of our actual diploma. While that is helpful, in order to be considered under education, you must have your transcripts uploaded. So please don't just put a copy of your diploma up there, even though it's probably a nice, pretty little diploma. But you know what? You want to make sure that you have your transcripts, because you won't be considered for education unless you have your transcripts uploaded to your USA Jobs profile. Another thing, if you won any awards while serving in a position that's pertinent to the job vacancy that you're applying for, you can upload those awards to USA Jobs. I know with me, I have a background in public relations. And so when I was in the military, I received an Army Commendation Medal. I received some medals based on my public affairs career in the Army. So I take those little certificates that show that I earned those medals in that arena, and I upload it to my USA Jobs profile. So if I'm applying for a job that's related to those awards that I won, I can add those to my USA Jobs profile, and that can also help me become a good candidate for the announcement that I'm applying for. So let's talk about some of the things that you let's individually talk about some of the things that you're going to include in your USA Jobs profile. So the first thing I want to talk about is the cover letter. Again, this is another controversial one that I mentioned earlier because cover letters are, I would say 90% of the time, cover letters are not required. They're good, but they're not required. So a lot of times when we see that something's not required, we just kind of bypass it. But I wouldn't bypass everything because some of those things that are not required can actually be the one thing that can help propel you to an interview if you actually include it in your application. So one of those things are cover letters. Again, cover letters should be one page. All right. I know sometimes we talk about the length of a federal resume. I know I guess we settled anywhere between 3 to 6 pages on a federal resume, but on a cover letter, one page is good enough. Because you don't have to put all of your experience on a cover letter. You're only talking about the experience that's pertinent to the position that you're applying for at that moment. That's why, just like your resumes, your cover letters should be editable every time. All right. You should be able to edit your your cover letters every time you apply for a new position. All right. Because if you don't, you're going to make some mistakes. One of the mistakes that you can make if you use the same cover letter is that you might be applying for a position at the VA, but your cover letter states that your cover letter may say the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, because maybe the last job you applied for was for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, but you used that same cover letter for the VA, and then now your current hiring manager sees that you're not proofreading, you're not looking at your work, and you submitted a cover letter for a different position that you applied for a different federal agency. So again, make sure that you tailor your cover letter to the position that you're applying for. And again, it only needs to be one page. You're just basically showing your character, you're showing your personality a little bit through the cover letter, and your cover letter, without you even knowing it, it conveys some information that your resume can't convey. So please, I would recommend that every time you apply for a position, please use a cover letter, even though 90% of the time it is not required. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is the resume, because the resume is the most important thing in your application, because your resume is showing this hiring manager all of the experience that you have that's important to the job that you're applying for. All right. So here are some tips on your resume. All right. Again, just like I talked about with the cover letter, make sure that you tailor your resume to each position. All right. Even if you are applying for jobs with the same job title, the same career field, you still want to make sure that you tailor your resume to each job vacancy. Because even though, let's say you're applying for an engineer position here at VA, even though you might see 10 engineer vacancies open with the VA, if you read through those job announcements, you'll see that those hiring managers may be asking for 10 different types of candidates. So you have your resume has to portray that you're the perfect type of candidate that they're looking for. They don't want to know that you're the perfect engineer, or you're a great engineer, or you have all of this plethora of experience as an engineer. They want to know, are you the perfect candidate for that one vacancy? And we get this question a lot on Talk About It Tuesday. A lot of the viewers always ask, hey, I applied for this job. I have all of this experience in this one career field, but I was deemed not eligible. And not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, you were deemed not eligible because although you had 10, 15, 20 years of experience in that career field, your resume did not convey that you were the perfect person for that actual vacancy. So don't think about the career field when you're applying for a job here at the VA. Think about, are you the perfect person for that job announcement? And the way you do that is you read the job announcement, you see what the theme of the job announcement is, and that will tell you if you have the perfect qualifications for that actual vacancy. Make sure your resume, again, has the information that's pertinent to that job announcement. Again, that's how hiring managers are going to be able to determine if you're the perfect candidate for that position. They look at your resume, and again, like I just mentioned a few moments ago, I know it seems like I'm kind of regurgitating information over and over, but we're not looking to see how many years of experience that you have in that position. We're just looking to see, do you have does your resume convey the qualifications that I'm looking for that selectee that's going to be sitting in my office in a month or two. So again, make sure your resume closely matches the job announcement. Now, don't go and copy and paste, because we can obviously see if you copied and pasted. But if you're reading a job announcement and you see that, oh yeah, I've done this, make sure you convey it on your resume. Okay. Again, make sure you proofread. All right, proofread your resume. Make sure that all your bullet points make sense. Because as a hiring manager, if I have to work extra hard to try to make sense of some of your bullet points, guess what? I'm gonna just throw your resume to the side and not even go through it, because there's a lot of resumes that hiring managers go through, and we will take the time to go through each resume. I don't want to even make you think that we won't do that. We will. Every resume that we get, we will go through to make sure that we find the top candidates for an interview. But if your resume makes it hard for the hiring manager to determine if you're a good candidate or not, guess what? It's going to get tossed to the side, and I don't want you to do that. So make sure you proofread. Another thing that a lot of people overlook on their resume is that sometimes we get so caught up in the details of our job experience, our education, that we forget one small detail to proofread. And guess what that is? That's your contact information. The contact information that's on your resume will be the contact information that the hiring manager will use to contact you. So if you're using an old email address that you don't use or you haven't looked at in years, make sure you change that to a current email address. Or make sure that that telephone number is accurate. I know that there are some people every few years they may change telephone numbers, but make sure the telephone number that's on your resume reflects the telephone number that's the one that you use the most and that the hiring manager can easily contact you on. All right. And when you're listing your job experience, obviously we use bullet points under each job that we've had to show what we've done. Another thing that a lot of candidates do wrong is that they give hiring manager generic experience. So let's say I was an engineer, all right? And my last 3 jobs were engineer positions, all right? But my bullet points show that I was an engineer, but it gives very generic information. As a hiring manager, I don't want your resume to look like a job announcement. I don't want to know what an engineer does from your resume. I want to know specifically, what did you do in those positions as an engineer? All right. Because again, I can go and Google, and sorry if there are any engineers watching, I'm not picking on engineers. That was just the first career fair that popped up in my head. But again, I don't want your resume to look like a job announcement. I don't want to see generic bullet points of this is what an engineer does at this company. I want to know, okay, this is the company you worked for. This is the job title that you've had. I want to know exactly what were your duties in that position as an engineer. Not what an engineer does generically, but what were your duties, all right? And that's another thing that keeps candidates from moving into the interview phases, because as a hiring manager, I don't want to know what an engineer does, because if I'm an engineer supervisor, I already know what an engineer does. I want to know what you did specifically in that job, all right? Especially if you were sitting in that job for an example, when my last position with the VA, not the one I currently sit in, but when I was in marketing with the VA, that was my last position that I was in. I sat in that position 6 years. All right. From the time I started on day 1 to the time I switched into a new position 6 years later, that position had evolved. I've had a lot of more duties that came to me over those 6 years. But if I just use a generic position description and make my resume out of that, guess what? I'm not going to include a lot of things that I've done, because I'm just using a generic position description. I need to, as a marketing person, when I was in that position, I needed to show what have I done personally in those 6 years. All right. So again, make sure you sit down, you write down your job duties, and you make sure that you add those to your resume. Because again, as a hiring manager, I want to know what you're doing. I don't want to know what your position consists of. I want to know what you as a candidate have been doing in those jobs that you have on your resume. All right. So kind of move on a little bit, because I know I can talk a lot about this. Questionnaires. Okay. Questionnaires are not the time to be modest. I know when you go to USA Jobs, you've submitted all your paperwork, and now you may have this 5 to 20 question questionnaire that you have to answer. All right. If you have first of all, read the questions. And if you read a question and you see that you have a lot of experience based on what that question is asking, don't be afraid to hit that you're an expert in that certain task. Okay. If it says that they want someone that types over 65 words per minute and someone that's a proficient in typing. All right. If you know that you type 100 words per minute, guess what? Don't be afraid to put that I'm an expert at typing. Don't be modest. All right. A lot of times, us being modest, I know we don't want to have this big head, but sometimes our modesty that we show prevents us from moving to the next level. So if you're asked a question in a questionnaire on USA Jobs and you have a lot of experience in that task that question is asking, please, I'm asking, please make sure you don't be modest. It's okay to click on that. I think it's either D or E that says that you're an expert in that particular task. But the most important thing is be honest. All right. If you know that you're not an expert, if you know that they're asking for someone that types 65 words per minute and you can barely put out 10 words per minute, don't be honest. All right. Be honest. All right. A lot of us aren't good typers. I know definitely I'm not a good typer. I know I don't type 65 words per minute. So, and I'm constantly hitting the backspace to correct words and stuff like that. And I do use the spell check. That's probably my favorite feature in Microsoft Word, that spell check feature. But please make sure you be honest. All right. And my final thing, when it comes to your application process, is when you read the job announcement, please make sure you read the section that says required documents. All right. Please make sure, because a lot of times candidates' applications are incomplete and they don't even know because they did not submit all of the required documents. Every job announcement has that section that says, here are the required documents. A lot of times the required documents is a resume and maybe some other things that are pertinent to your status if you're a status candidate. But there are some jobs that do require a cover letter. There are some jobs that require, things outside of the resume. So please don't mess yourself up by not looking at the required document section and hitting submit on your application without having all of the required documents in there. And there are certain steps along the way that to make sure that you have, or if you have all your documents uploaded. But please make sure that all your required documents are uploaded into your application on USA Jobs. So again, if you tuned in the middle of this conversation or you just tuning in out, today we're talking about the application, what to include in your application and how to make your application one of those applications that can get you over to the interview phase. Again, this discussion will always be on our our Veterans Affairs LinkedIn page. So you can always come back and watch this broadcast in its entirety. So with that, I think we have a few questions, and excuse my finger, I'm just popping up on the chat box here. So let's see what questions that we have. See if I can scroll. Let's see what we have. So again, I'm sorry, I'm using my finger. Let's see what we have. All right. So one question that we have is, so this is from Nancy. So Nancy is asking, does the hiring manager look at your references after reviewing your profile resume? Is that part of the next steps to hiring? So when it comes to references, your USA Jobs profile has references on it and your resume has references on it. So when it comes to references, a lot of times and again, every situation is different, but when it comes to references, a lot of times that's the last part of the hiring process. So once you've made it through the USA Jobs process, you've made it through the interview process, maybe it's one interview, maybe it's two interviews, depending on the hiring manager. And let's say that you are being selected for that position. So let's say you made it through all those parts, you've interviewed, and guess what? The hiring manager says, you know what? I want you for this position. So before they do that, the last step is someone contacting your references. So normally if someone from the VA contacts your references, that's almost a good sign that you're being selected for that position. I won't say 100%, but I'll say probably about 90%. That if your references are being contacted, that means you're probably you're in the runner up to be selected for that position. So, but yes, references are normally checked after the interview process, and once the hiring manager has selected someone for that position, then their references are contacted. So, Nancy, thank you for that question. And I hope that I was able to answer your questions. Michelle is asking, would internships with the VA count as a status application? I would say that if you're doing an internship with the VA, yes, because most time interns are employees of the VA. Now it depends on what type of internship is, but if you are an intern and you get an SF50 based on the internship, and you can talk to your human resources office at the facility or the program office where you're doing your internship. But if you get an SF50 because of that internship, you can most likely use that as a federal employee status. So again, I would say talk to your human resources person. And it depends on the type of internship that you're doing. But I would say if you're doing an internship or if you've done an internship and you were given an SF50, that's SF50, Sierra Foxtrot 50 for all my military people. If you were given that as a part of your internship, you can use that to qualify under the federal employee status. So, Michelle, thank you for that question. I really appreciate it. Let's see. So I think this is D'Antonice. So I'm sorry if I kind of butchered your name. So D'Antonice is asking, once you have been referred for a position that is continuous, how long does it take to hear back regarding the next step? So a continuous announcement is an announcement that's open for a long-term period of time. Sometimes you may find some announcements that are open the whole fiscal year or open the whole calendar year. I think I saw an IT position the other day that was open. It opened on January 23rd, and it doesn't close until December. So it's open for like 11 to 12 months. So those are continuous positions. So again, sometimes the job announcement shows how often they're going to be plucking candidates from those continuous announcements. I know a lot of times that let's say an announcement is open for 12 months, they may decide to pull candidates every 15 days. So from the time that the job announcement opened, they may say, hey, we're going to do, maybe it's every 10 days. Some is every 15 days. Some is every 20 days. So it just depends on the job announcement. But I know I've seen some job announcements that were continuous where it says that candidates will be pulled from that job announcement every 15 days. So again, it all depends. It varies based on the hiring manager. It varies based on that VA facility or program office. But if a position is continuous, which means it's open long term, sometimes that can be 6 months. Sometimes that can be a whole fiscal year or maybe a whole calendar year. So those are continuous positions. But if you have applied for a continuous position, read the job announcement because it may say in the job announcement how often candidates will be pulled. And again, that can be just depending on the hiring manager or the human resources department at that facility. Again, it could be once every 10 days, once every 15 days, once every 20 to 25 days. It just depends. So I can't give you a definite answer on that, but I can say that they do pick a time frame where they pull candidates. And again, it just depends on the hiring manager or the HR office. So with that, we're at the bottom of the hour. It is now 12:30 Eastern time. So unfortunately, I have to log off now. But as always, it's great talking to you guys and give you this information. Whether it's me or whether it's my coworkers, Tim or Kendra, that you see on a monthly basis. We really enjoy giving you guys this information, and as long as VA allows us, we're going to continue feeding it to you on every Tuesday. So with that, we thank you for watching. We appreciate you, and we will see you on next Tuesday. Have a great day.